Disney MGM Studios, July 22, 1994. Amid a busy and historic year for the Walt Disney Company and its parks, the Hollywood Tower Hotel, or the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, that is, opened at the end of the new Sunset Boulevard as the park's headliner e-ticket attraction. It was an instant classic, and for more than 25 years, it has crossed guests over from present day to the fifth dimension of the Twilight Zone. There's been a lot of talk of change in recent years, and I think it would be tragic if Disney ever decided to re-theme the ride and move away from Rod Serling's iconic show simply because it's one of the last intellectual properties in the park that they don't own. Regardless of whether they want to change it to the Guardians of the Galaxy attraction in California Adventure or just remove the Twilight Zone theme for licensing reasons, I think a lot of people would be very sad to see the Twilight Zone go. Which brings me to the main point of this video. There's a pretty popular video from Rob Plays over on his channel, Midway to Main Street, in which he argues a pretty unique claim, that the Tower of Terror is a bad Twilight Zone attraction. As a big Twilight Zone and Tower of Terror enthusiast, I disagreed with his analysis more and more as I reevaluated every aspect of the ride. When it came to his remark that the two never worked well together in the first place, and that the Tower of Terror's story would be better off without the Twilight Zone theme, I couldn't help but think he's just plain wrong. The Twilight Zone is an amazing fit for the Tower's story, not only because of the horror and fantasy genre defining elements within the ride, but I believe even the setting and use of the ride system meld them together perfectly. To explain why, I think we have to go through the attraction scene by scene, and reference a few classic episodes. What most guests haven't known until after the classic pre-show is that the attraction's story began long before Serling tells them that this episode is going to be somewhat unique. The setup for the attraction truly begins when guests turn onto Sunset Boulevard and first decide to head to that old abandoned-looking tower. The surrounding buildings of a bygone era and the atmosphere, such as the classic 30s, 40s big band music and streetmosphere characters that seem to treat you like a citizen yourself, seem to indicate you've stepped into the past. Although you know it is present day, there's something off about this place, isn't there? I've always considered it to start even earlier, as soon as you enter the park on Hollywood Boulevard. The atmosphere is so similar that they feel like an extension of each other, but that's just me. At the end of Sunset, you make it to the hotel. The old decrepit building invites you to walk the grounds of the exterior, the gardens, the terrace, and into the lobby level, where if you hadn't realized before, you see that it isn't just ruins from an old hotel, but that things appear to be left in place as if no one has touched them in decades. Emotionless bellhops escort you to wait for your room, curiously in the library. The lobby elevators are currently down, of course. Suddenly, lightning strikes, the lights go out, but the television screen glitches. Something strange happens.
You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension.
Like most Twilight Zone episodes, Rod Serling appears and makes his intro only after the inciting incident in the first few moments, which up until this moment, we didn't realize was our own intrigue. We are and have been the characters in this episode, and what we were unaware of was that stumbling into the Hollywood Tower Hotel caused us to enter the Twilight Zone. It's such an awesome moment, because while it explains some of the mystery, the what happened here and why this hotel is in the state it's in, it also sets up even more suspense of what's to come. If the hotel's abandoned, why are we boarding an elevator? And what floor are we getting off on exactly? On the surface, the attraction's setup and continuing story does in fact display a lot of the qualities you'd find in a typical Twilight Zone episode. That sense that things aren't quite what they seem, and suspense, occur throughout each scene of the ride, continuing from the library to the boiler room, and of course as you move upwards to the hallway scene once you're in the elevator. The hallway is where another quintessential Twilight Zone element occurs, the twist. The already obviously supernatural phenomenon that is the hotel transforms right in front of your own eyes into a star field you've seen before. The window at the end of the hall becomes black and white, and moves before shattering, echoing the moment in the famous show's intro. As you move to the next scene, it becomes abundantly clear that you are on a most uncommon elevator in an unprecedented episode, because not only does this elevator move forwards, but it quite literally enters the fifth dimension, only seen before in the beginning moments of the show. This is where the genius of building the story around the use of a drop tower system and theming it to a spooky elevator really shines.
Rod Serling every week said he unlocked the door to another dimension, to the fifth dimension. So we thought, we'll take you there. This is something he couldn't do. He showed stories about this place, but we thought if we could actually put you in the Twilight Zone, this would be something unique. Invariably, the stories dealt with ordinary people in ordinary situations that have an extraordinary thing happen to them. So this idea of walking into a hotel and confronting an elevator that takes you to another dimension, that's the twist that provides us a doorway into the Twilight Zone. We also know that most of the people visiting the Disney MGM studios are staying in the hotels and facing elevators and having this experience every day. So we wanted to twist that little common experience of theirs, a device known to be used on the Twilight Zone, and make that the basis, the starting point of this supernatural story. So it just fits in so nicely with the themes that Rod Serling dealt with.
The show writers knew the fifth dimension would thematically fit so well, because for the first time, they could fully immerse guests in the idea of the Twilight Zone as an actual alternate dimension, all while staying true to the nature of the show's formula by turning the everyday common activity, like an elevator ride, into a horror story. What lies beyond the fifth dimension is the payoff, the third act where the characters find a resolution, whether that be good or bad. Quite like the show, it's able to execute a story that sustains that suspense until the final moments. So how else is the attraction similar to the original show? I think the supernatural theme and other elements. If you've ever watched episodes such as Living Doll or What's in the Box, you'll see that the antagonist is often not a person or even a ghost or alien creature, but an object or a place that can both incite the story and remain as the central focus of the plot. In Living Doll, we know that Talkie Tina is sentient and seems to be vindictive towards those who want her destroyed. In What's in the Box, we know that the television seems to reveal a man's actions and intentions before he knows it himself. But that's all we ever know out of both of those stories. The show typically offered little explanation for the sinister nature and the extraordinary powers of these objects. I think Imagineers captured this aspect extremely well when creating the Tower of Terror's story. Like those episodes and many others, such as Nick of Time and Little Girl Lost, who, by the way, are both featured in Easter egg tributes in the attraction, the episode ends with the antagonist still retaining that aura of mystery and leaves the viewers with a question to think about. In this case, it's wondering how the tower was able to repeat the incident from 1939, and how it even happened in the first place. Speaking of leaving viewers with something to think about, I couldn't analyze the appropriate use of the show in the attraction without addressing one more famous aspect of the show. It was well known for its subtext and taking on more serious subject matter than the evil dolls, time traveling, and sci-fi space stories we'd see on our screens. That being said, a ride based on that show would have to have a deeper meaning, right? I do believe the Tower of Terror was given subtext, written by the Imagineers when they created the script and story details, and I'll touch on this a little more at the end of the video. I will say I think the lack of a clear meaning is the best argument against the ride's overall tone consistency with the show. However, I think credit should be given, one, because after all, this quote-unquote episode was written for a theme park ride, so it's kept lighthearted and superficial even in its creepiness. And two, as the characters of the episode this time around, the meaning wouldn't necessarily be as clear, just as it wasn't clear to Garth Williams in A Stop at Willoughby that his longing for the peace of the town was an allegory for nostalgia and wanting to escape the pressures of modern life.
Willoughby, your stop is Willoughby. Willoughby!
If there is indeed a deeper theme, it's most evident when you reach the bottom of the drop shaft and begin your re-entry to the basement level of the tower. The attraction concludes with Serling giving us one last voiceover, a send-off before we leave to go check our photos. If nothing else, this is the part that best embodies the original show. As guests head towards the elevator doors, that iconic voice leaves you with this.
A warm welcome back to those of you who made it, and a friendly word of warning, something you won't find in any guidebook. The next time you check into a deserted hotel on the dark side of Hollywood, Make sure you know just what kind of vacancy you're filling, or you may find yourself a permanent resident of the Twilight Zone.
It truly sounds like a closing narration from Serling viewers would hear on the end of a true episode, written in that way that they all were. There's a clear, understandable lesson to be careful around old, spooky, dangerous, and unopened hotels, and there's a hint of illustrative language. The dark side of Hollywood. What type of vacancy you're filling. Like any other episode, this one has something to say about the real world. I think the Imagineers left that subtext ambiguous so that it's open to multiple interpretations. Maybe similar to the episode Walking Distance, it's about the true dangers of living in the past, both literally and figuratively. Perhaps it's deeper. Commentary on the dark side hiding underneath the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. How the thrill of fame and fortune can truly disappear if you're not in the right place at the right time. Or maybe the attraction is super metaphorical, and the fifth dimension being located inside the Hollywood Tower Hotel is a reference to how the world of Hollywood and show business can make one out of touch with reality. This interpretation makes me think of the episode A World of Difference, where businessman Arthur Curtis realizes he's actually an actor on the set of a movie. If the lore of the Tower of Terror is meant to be symbolic, personally, I think the 5 people that disappeared in 1939 represent the studios that were known as the Big Five at the time in Hollywood: Paramount, Fox, RKO, Warner Brothers, and MGM. I think at the very least they have to be a reference to the studios. It just would connect so well to the theme and time period of the ride, although how that detail would belong in the subtext is unclear. And that's what I find so fun about this. I think the attraction leaves so much to the writer's interpretation. At the very end, the attraction's theme may mean something else, and what that is up to you. It's why I think it's a huge disservice to the careful design of the Imagineers to say it was just a disjointed way of including intellectual property. Should they ever drop the Twilight Zone property and theming, it would completely strip the ride of its heart and soul. Not only its great storytelling, but also its artistic value. I'm not sure a better version of a Twilight Zone-esque story could have been created for a 3.5-minute ride. Imagine if Disney had decided to use real episodes and incorporate scenes from them into the attraction, or even base the whole ride on the show's more iconic characters and iconography. Whether they utilized the same ride system or something else, it would have played out like a Fantasyland, Peter Pan's Flight, or a journey through a range of scenes like in the Great Movie Ride, retelling the story and sort of being a greatest hits of the Twilight Zone. And as cool as that may be to ride through, it wouldn't have been nearly as creative or interesting. Instead, at least for its die-hard fans like myself, it leaves a little of the thinking to you. Does the attraction have the thematic or psychological depth of the show? I'd say definitely not when compared to its best examples. But the Tower of Terror's originality and storytelling devices, I think, make it so different even from the average Disney attraction. It's a great tribute to the Twilight Zone and the man behind it. Arguably, I think Serling himself would be proud to see the innovative way the writers integrated his show into a theme park attraction, and how they were able to bring suspense, subversion, and a story with a moral all to a simple drop tower ride. It did for the tower what Serling did for television: turn the usual, thrilling, simple escapism into a multi-dimensional story that creeps you out, shocks you with a twist or two, all while leaving you with a lesson of some kind. Many of the themes mentioned earlier were present in Mr. Serling's own personal and professional life, and are ones that the Tower of Terror may help us to consider as it turns us from the casual passive viewer into the characters ourselves. In this episode, we check into a mystery and check out with answers, but boarding the service elevator is hotel policy during our stay. Guest starring in this mystery is guaranteed to take you to the top, and it's a role that can only be played in the Twilight Zone.